Jason was 56, driving to dinner in Dubai when his hand suddenly slipped off the steering wheel, and moments later, his foot slammed down on the accelerator. That's how his stroke started. What followed was a brain hemorrhage, partial paralysis, and a recovery journey that took him across countries through experimental treatments and into some deeply emotional territory. But here's the part that might surprise you. It wasn't the cutting edge drug or the therapy machine that changed everything. Jason says that the biggest breakthrough came from something far more personal. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Recovery After Stroke podcast. I am so glad you're here. Whether you're a stroke survivor, a caregiver, or someone just looking for hope after a brain injury, you're in the right place. More and more people are finding this podcast while still in hospital, sometimes just days after being diagnosed. That's why I started this, to shorten the time between stroke and connection. And if you're someone who believes in the power of shared stories to make recovery feel less lonely and more possible, please consider supporting the show at patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. Every contribution helps keep this mission alive. Now, let me introduce you to Jason, a brain hemorrhage survivor who tried nearly everything to get his life back. Etanercept, TMS, HBOT, acupuncture, Botox, diet changes, and more. But what you're about to hear goes beyond rehab and into something much deeper. This is the real work of recovery, the mental, emotional, and human side. Let's dive in. Jason Hellowell, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to see you.
Nice
Good
to
morning.
see you. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Tell me, what was life like for you before the stroke?
Oof. I was a very active person. I rode motorcycles, I water skied, I skied, I have a boat, living life at its best, without question. Yeah, and then things change
How old were you?
within split seconds. I was 56 when it happened.
And tell me about that day. What was it like leading up to the stroke? Did you notice anything? And then what happened?
Um, in hindsight, when you look back after it happens, you kind of think back, was there anything that gave me a sign that potentially would say, okay, you're about to have this brain hemorrhage? And in hindsight, yes, there may be a couple of things that happened, among others, waking up in the morning and having a very dizzy spell, just bang. Whoa, that's dizziness, right? And then it was gone. And being a typical man, bloke syndrome, I just went, oh, that's nothing, just waking up. I'm 56, nothing. And then on the 6th of September 2023, I was driving along the Sheikh Zayed Road, which is the main artery road in Dubai here, where I live. And my hand fell off the steering wheel of the car. And my right hand just went and dropped off the steering wheel. Luckily, I pulled into the side. I put the car into park, because then 2 minutes later, my foot did the same, but landed on the accelerator. So then it was, the engine was revving and it was going absolutely, So luckily I'd stopped the car, because if I'd have just carried on driving my left hand, I would have driven into whatever, right? Anyways, my wife was with me. Luckily, she found super strength to get me out of the car, into the back of the car, and off we went to hospital. And there you go.
Where were you
Stroke
guys
happened.
heading?
We were on the way out for dinner, regular day, just going for dinner. No symbols, no pain, no signs, no pains, no headaches, no nothing. I was aware that I had a blood pressure and had for some time. And I had been to the doctors, and the doctors had all told me there is blood pressure, but only one. I look now and find an email with a prescription for blood pressure tablets in 2020, I think it was. And for some reason, I missed that email and nobody followed up. So it was a prescription by email that I never saw. Anyway, but then you've gone to the doctor a few times afterwards, right? And you've been told blood pressure. Nobody has gone, boom, let's just take you and give you a blood pressure tablet, which I'm a little furious about. But anyways, as everybody tells you, you can't cry over spilt milk. You've got to face with the facts of what it is. And here I am now.
What were your first thoughts about what's happening to your hand while you're driving and what happened to your leg afterwards?
Well, first of all, when my hand fell off the steering wheel, I said to my wife, "There's something wrong with the steering wheel of the car." I don't know what my reaction was. It felt like the steering was loose, so I blamed everything else. I didn't even think about it. And even when I was in the back of the car, though I did have seconds or moments where I thought, "This is the end of it, right? Here's the end." I did have that thought. Um, I continued to be very chilled and just thought, "We'll fix this. It's just something that you go to the doctors, they'll give you something, you'll be fixed." And I kind of still think that. Um, but now you're kind of more aware of what it really is and where I am. Now we're just under 2 years from the happenance of it happening and fighting on the path, of recovery, basically.
How long did it take to get you to the hospital from that particular location where you guys stopped the car?
Less than half an hour.
Okay.
So we were very quickly to the hospital, but we had to go to another hospital to be treated. Um, so I went to the clinic actually where I'd been 6 months before and where I was told that I had high blood pressure. Um, Too late then, but and then we were sent in an ambulance to a neurospinal hospital where they could do the neuro, where I was told to wait for 72 hours to let the blood pressure go down. They had done a scan, they could see the bleed. And then afterwards, they did an operation where they cut in and they took out the blood, the excessive blood that was there to give a better chance of recovery. And thankfully, because prior to the opening and the removal of the hematoma, um, my speech was pretty bad. But the minute that blood was removed, my speech came back very weakly, but it did come back. So I
Yeah.
didn't lose speech.
Yeah. So the blood, like me, when I had the bleed in my head the first time,
Mm,
it impacted my left side feeling, sensation, all that
mm,
kind of stuff. Everything
mm,
was numb,
mm,
like you've
mm.
like you've sat on your foot's gone numb, then you've gone to step on it.
Yeah,
My entire left side was like that. But you
yeah,
wouldn't really feel like I didn't know that it was associated to my head. Anyway, when the second bleed happened 6 weeks later,
mm, mm.
there was more blood about the size of a golf ball in my head. So that took offline. That took offline the memory, speech, uh, typing, concentration, focus, driving. Lots of things went away. And then as the blood
Yeah.
decreased in size over about a year and a half, because they never took it out
Mm,
initially, then what happened was all the functions started to come back, and I started to feel normal, and everything started to go back to like it was before. But the
mm.
blood vessel was
Okay.
still faulty; it was still bleeding.
Ah,
Microbleeds, they called it microbleeds, and then later on, when it bled for the third time, then I blacked out, like everything went, um, and that
okay.
was pretty dramatic. No, so I beg your pardon. The second time, everything went and I blacked out. The third time, it felt like sunburn. I was sunburnt. That's all I felt. And I went to the hospital, said, my
Right.
left side feels like it's burning. I have
Yeah.
definitely having another bleed because this is my history, etc. So what your what happened to your brain was the blood is just compressing on neurons and cells and just
Yeah.
making them go offline. It's not damaging them
Yeah.
by making them go off sleepy. The part that's damaged is in a different location. It's uh, at the epicenter of the bleed,
Mm,
for example,
mm.
and that's the part of the blood, the a part of the brain that perhaps you could say died or stopped working, and then the rest of it around there is just gone offline and just waiting for an intervention so that it can come back online.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you were in
Yeah.
hospital, how long were you in there for?
I was in hospital for a month.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we were doing, or obviously I was very, very disabled. I was fully paralyzed right side. Um, and quite quickly after the operation, I was beginning to do physiotherapy, but very difficult. But I managed to get up and move around. But then I was about a few weeks once I came home, was wheelchair bound. And then, you just start training and hoping. And the walking, I mean, much as it looks, I limp and I struggle and balance is pretty bad. My biggest challenge is the arm. I have very little use of the arm. And, I can see your hand does the opening and closing. I just want to have a little bit of opening and closing to start to train that, because I do believe that you can train it back, but I need that connection to begin to be able to train it. And at the moment, that hand doesn't react, unfortunately.
Let's take a moment to pause and reflect on what Jason's been sharing, from paralysis on the right side of his body to trying nearly every therapy he could. Jason's story is one of relentless effort and emotional depth. And while he's seen progress from experimental treatments like Etanercept and TMS, what stands out most is his emotional recovery, learning to speak kindly to himself, releasing long-held pain, and discovering strength he didn't know he had. If this podcast is helping you make sense of your own recovery after stroke, one way you can support it is simply by listening through the ads. It's a small gesture, but it helps us keep producing and sharing stories like Jason's. If you'd like to go further and help bring these conversations to people who are just starting their recovery, sometimes even in their hospital beds, consider joining us on Patreon at patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. Your support makes this possible. Now let's get back to Jason's story and hear what he's discovering about healing, body, brain, and heart.
I can grip, but I can't open.
Yeah. Is it painful?
Do you know what? The pain went away when I did Etanercept.
Okay.
So, as I wrote to you on the thing, I've tried most of the solutions that you've talked about on your podcast.
Yeah.
I've done all of them, actually. The only one I haven't tried yet is stem cell treatment, which I may go towards in a while, but I don't know. I've looked into the guy in America, this guy Tom, who's created the drug. I'd be interested to hear that. Yeah. So the pain mostly went when I had Etanercept.
Okay. We'll talk about
Before
that.
It was a glowing pain. It's just a continuous. And in fact, having had it for, let's say, 15 months by the time I went for Etanercept, I didn't even realize I had the pain until it was gone.
Oh.
Your body gets so used to it. You get so used to being in pain all the time that until somebody injects you, and all of a sudden, when I was lying in the chair, felt like somebody when they talk about somebody walks over your grave and you go cold. I had that down my right hand side, and the pain was gone. It's come back a little bit in certain times. When my fist is tight like this, I get pain, but otherwise I'm not in that much pain, to be honest with you.
Okay. So how about your leg? What sort of situation is your leg in? Are you fully mobile?
Yeah, I can get up and walk around. I can move around. I walk, like this morning, I went out for a walk and I walk a kilometer. It's not the prettiest walk. It's my leg swings out a little bit, but I can use it to get around. Like you said before, a little bit of imbalance. So the risk of fall is there. I have spasticity in my ankle, spasticity everywhere, but my foot tends to kick inwards, which makes a little risk of standing wrongly and then falling.
Yeah. And if I recall correctly, that swing that your leg has got is from the knee. It kind of hasn't got that real focused swing so that it goes backwards and forwards. It kind of just goes wherever it wants for a little bit.
That's right. Exactly. So from the knee down, I have less control than I do at the hip. And actually the hip is interesting because I have forward and backward movement on the hip, but I have very little stability on the diagonal movement. So the leg tends to go out and swing around. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then you land on your foot and use it as a support to move forward in the next one.
Yeah.
But again, that's a training thing. I think we can train that pattern and get back to normality by building strength. I believe if I can get my leg strength fully back, we can begin to get there.
Yeah, I
But I
think
need my hand, I need to ride my motorcycle.
priorities.
Yeah,
You might have,
motivation.
yeah, you might have to get a three-wheeler and reconfigure the grips or get an automatic one.
Yeah, maybe, but I need then a left hand throttle and balance would be incorrect. It's just, I keep the motorcycle because it's a motivation to
Yeah,
get better.
yeah,
And I think where there's a will, there's a way, is my saying, right?
yeah. Why not? Like, I don't see an issue with that as well. It'd be a great thing to try and redo, and then
Mm,
and also adapt if you can't get there. However many years down the track you decide I might not get there. Well, then just adapt it and find another way to do it.
of course. Yes.
If it's a
You
three-wheeler,
know,
it's a three-wheeler.
exactly. It's no issue.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
just before we move into all the things that you've tried, I know you've tried a few things, and
Mm,
I love that because we'll talk about them all. So,
yeah.
what's family life like? You, your wife, who else? Anyone else around? What kind of work were you doing? How busy are you? What things were you up to?
I'm kind of lucky that I work for myself, and a lot of what I do is networked or WhatsApp or Zoom, and I do go out and meet people occasionally. I have a trading company here in Dubai where we import and export certain things, so that's okay. It's not obviously there was a long period of time where I wasn't even sharp enough in my head to do things, but I'm back to, you know, I'm on a path of recovery and I'm good on my way there, right? Um, with some restrictions. Family life, I live here with my wife. My two kids have grown up. They're both, in their 20s, living in Copenhagen, hence why I went to Copenhagen for the Etanercept. And yeah, try my best in the situation we have. You got to take the best you can because
Yeah,
I'm still here, right?
yeah.
As you well know, brain hemorrhages are one of those ones where the chance of living are very minimal.
Apparently, they
So,
are less common but more fatal.
correct. From what I've read, 5% of people who have a brain hemorrhage survive.
Right. Wow, that's
So
dramatic.
we're the lucky ones.
Oh, mate, I'm very lucky. I'm blessed. I didn't know that the numbers were that bad against
Yeah, it
people
is
with
bad.
brain hemorrhages. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, how did you find out about Etanercept?
Um, I think it was just online, or very possibly. Oh, no, I'll tell you what it was. I have a friend in Denmark who has another friend who had had a stroke, ischemic stroke, a little older than me. And he had heard about this being given in Denmark. And so then I started to research on it because this friend sent me the information. And I watched all the videos on the website and so on and so forth. And then I spoke with these people in Denmark, and then we went and did it. It was my opinion. My attitude was, what have I got to lose? Once you've understood that there is no risk with it, um, it's either going to work or it's not going to work, or it's going to work a little bit and maybe not totally. But there's there's more benefits and more chances of it doing something than not.
The doctors in Denmark, are they affiliated at all in any way with Dr. Tobinick from Florida?
Yes, they are the licensed providers of etanercept, perispinal etanercept, following the
The
what can we
method.
say, the guidelines of Dr. Tobinick.
The method.
Yes.
Is there any,
So go
did
ahead.
you do any preliminary tests, examinations to determine whether you're a candidate or not? Like, what was that procedure like beforehand?
Yes. I had to do blood tests to test if my blood, or sorry, if I'd ever had tuberculosis, and come back with the tests to show them that my bloods were good to receive etanercept. And then when we got to the clinic, I went through a bunch of tests, load questions and cognitivity, how you walk, just to give a benchmark so that when you'd had the injection, they could check how you were doing after having had the injection.
Okay. And what's that like for you? You fly in, you settle in your family home with your kids or whomever, and then head down, do the injection. What was that like that whole day?
So my kids live there, but we stayed in a hotel. So we flew into Copenhagen, checked into the hotel, and then the next day, my daughter drove us out to where the clinic was, and we sat down and did the test with Mr. Michael, and yeah, I had the first injection. And the first injection, I definitely felt a difference. Like within 4 minutes, I told you, this cold feeling through the body, pain was gone. The main benefit was my voice. I have depth to my voice. I sound powerful in my voice. Before, it was very weak. I was struggling to get the words out, and I would trip over words. I would have to pause and count and think, and my brain was working to try and get all these words into place. Now it's just there. So I'm very grateful for that. First injection was like that. I thought maybe that there was some mobility benefits. I'm not sure if that's a placebo effect and my desire, willpower, wanting to be better, because injection number 2 came, and there was not really any big change after injection number 2. And the question is now, would I go back in July and do the third one?
Why July?
Because you've got to wait 2 months or something for the third one. You do 2 within a 10-day period. So first one, and then 10 days later, you do the second one. If the first one has given you effect, if you didn't have effect from the first one, you may say, okay, it didn't do anything. There was not enough inflammation to be able to get a result. I wouldn't do number 2, but I was like, I'll try anything, right? So I'll do it. And maybe I'll do the same with number 3, but I don't know. Given that there has been no drastic change since number 2, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, fair enough. What does it cost per injection?
I'm not sure if I can talk about that, because I think they differ from different places. So I don't want to mislead people. But the first injection was 9,000 euros. And I believe in the United States, it's $9,000 for an injection, I believe. But again, it may differ per injection. I think the first one, second one, third one have different prices in different places. But the average price is about $9,000 per injection.
Okay. Or 9,000 euros, somewhere there.
Yeah, they're around.
Yeah. There seems to be a really interesting conversation happening around Etanercept. So in Australia, you can't actually access Etanercept unless it's in a clinical trial, which is for a very small amount of people. And that's just to determine its efficacy, because nobody is doing clinical trials for Etanercept to see whether it is efficacious for people who have had a neurological injury. So it's extremely difficult to find anyone to talk about it, etc. Now, I recently received an email from Dr. Tobin's office telling me that they wanted to refute some of the findings of a trial that was called the Pesto trial, that was done about a year and a half ago, and the results haven't been released yet after a year that the study has finished. And I asked Dr. Tobin's office for an interview, and they refused. I couldn't get an interview with him. So I also tried to get an interview with the researchers on the Pesto trial, the trial that concluded in mid-2024, which the results were supposed to be out by now. And they also haven't been able to confirm whether or not I'll be able to get an interview with anybody. So there's this whole kind of industry of keeping information close to their chest rather than telling people, what's going on with this product, or whether or not it's suitable, how to access it, and all this type of stuff. And I don't understand exactly why.
No, neither do I.
One of the challenges,
I don't understand that.
One of the challenges then is managing all of the comments on YouTube, which is, it worked for me, it was great, or this is a scam. This is where we're sitting. From your experience, I know that you had a positive outcome of sorts, but your hand didn't perhaps have any positive outcome.
No.
What is your sense of this entire thing? Like, I know you kind of thought it can't harm, so I may as well give it a try. But what's your sense now that you've done it about this whole Etanercept thing? Miracle drug for some people, complete demonic, ridiculous, terrible thing for others?
Um, I think, my reckoning is that the sooner you can do it, the better. I was beyond 12 months, so I can't remember. It was 16, 17 months after my stroke that it happened. So therefore, has the inflammation reduced? Uh, and as we both know, every single stroke is different. Every single person's reaction to the stroke is different. How much you affected, whatever. Um, I've watched all the videos, I've listened to all the interviews online. You know, it's working for some people. So my belief, I'm very pro Etanercept. As I said, I'll try it. If it works, positive. If it doesn't, I've not lost anything. But given that it has worked for many people, and I can tell you, for me, it has given me clarity of brain. It has given me better speech and a pain relief to a degree that is unexplainable. Mobility, my stroke happened on the left side of my brain in what's called the motor strip. So my mobility is very affected. Is Etanercept going to fix that? I don't know. What I would be interested to know, because they say you can do these 3 injections, I'd be like, well, what if I took 6 injections? Would that have any bigger benefits? Is there a chance if I took more of it that I would have a better effect? I don't know. I would love to know those kind of things, and I will be following up to find out that.
Yeah, they're good questions to ask. But I feel like what etanercept does is it impacts in a positive way inflammation as opposed to brain damage. So once the brain
Yeah,
is damaged, it's offline. You're not getting
yeah,
that part back.
yeah,
And if you have a lot of
yeah,
that, well, then your deficits are huge. But with regards
yeah,
to the other parts where there's inflammation
mm,
and it's taken some of the brain offline, just like the blood
yeah,
did when it was touching on the
yeah,
brain cells,
yeah, yeah,
that is I think what it impacts positively by reducing the inflammation there, removing the chemical situation that occurs, and then allowing that part of the brain to come back online, and it does it instantly.
yes,
But the question is also with regards to inflammation, you can re-inflame the brain. Poor diet,
yes,
say you're smoking and drinking, you can re-inflame the brain.
yeah,
And then I imagine you
yeah.
can undo the positive work that etanercept has done. Have you
Yeah.
give us a bit of an understanding of like how you look after your body and brain these days? What do you do?
My wife has become my personal nutritionist, and she's amazing. So I eat healthily. I would say 80% vegan, no dairy. Um, I do eat meat, and I do, like I say, 80%. Um, I exercise every day. I'm pretty much in the gym every day. I still do physiotherapy 3, 4, 5 times a week. Um, yeah, so a lot has changed, and it's all focused on the path of recovery.
Yeah. So in regards to a vegan diet, I wouldn't recommend a strict vegan diet, but I'm
Mm,
not a doctor, so don't take any of my
mm.
recommendations or comments as advice. But also
No.
adding protein is really important to help
Mm,
the brain. So the fact that
mm,
you're having a high vegetable diet that includes
mm,
protein and doesn't include
mm,
dairy, what I'm
mm.
seeing is like that's a very anti-inflammatory diet most of the time,
Correct. Correct.
especially if you're not overdoing it with lentils and things that have
Mm,
a lot of inflammatory kind of situations.
mm.
Some people can bloat if they eat um, lentils
Yeah.
and beans and all that kind of stuff. That tends to also impact
Yeah.
the brain negatively. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've tried some other things as well as etanercept. What else have you tried?
So pretty much soon after I came from hospital, I did hyperbaric oxygen chamber, which I did 3 sessions. I did 30 sessions of hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Again, I had read that, if you can increase the oxygen and you go to hyperbaric, it's very good for healing. So will it heal the wound in the brain and so on? And can I give you a specific, yes, it did something? No. Is it a part of my healing? Is it a part of where I am? Very possibly. The more I read about it, the more I think, I would go back and do it again. It's very good for you anyway. So there's nothing to lose by doing it. But there's no specific, I felt this different because of it. Whereas with the Etanercept, there was a definite, I felt this. There we go.
Did you do the Etanercept
Um,
first or the hyperbaric first?
Hyperbaric first. And
Uh-huh.
then I did hyperbaric first, 30 sessions. I then went to Switzerland to a particular clinic in Switzerland where they did TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation.
Uh-huh.
There I only did 10 sessions. I've since met a doctor here in Dubai who does it too, and they want to do me 30 sessions, which I will possibly, I'm likely to begin soon.
Okay.
Um,
Tell me about that. What
yeah,
is it supposed to do?
it's, I think the whole idea is, so it's a plate that comes to your head here, and you just feel this like a crackling. It's not painful. It isn't. It's a little weird. If you imagine two electric things going together, and you see that little flashing light that goes across and it's like if you put your finger between it, that's the feeling that you have on your head,
Uh-huh.
kind of thing. And it's supposed to, if you go on to ChatGPT and say, what are the best things I can do to recover mobility of my right arm, having suffered a intercerebral hematoma, TMS is one of the top things that comes up.
Mhm.
And whether you believe in AI or not, AI is a source of information second to none. And so when you go in and throw these questions into ChatGPT, it comes up with some fabulous responses.
Yeah.
And so I'm following those kind of things really.
Yeah. So TMS and ChatGPT, I mean, ChatGPT is just a search engine and it's really good at
Of course.
being
Yeah.
really detailed search engine, and sometimes it's not accurate. So
Of
if
course.
there is some information there about TMS, it's only because it's starting to be discussed regularly and there's stuff on the internet about it because ChatGPT is
That's right. Of
trained on the entire internet. So that's where it's getting that
course.
information from. So when I type
Agreed.
in TMS to ChatGPT, which I just did, I said, what does TMS do? It says it delivers magnetic pulses through a coil placed against the scalp. These pulses target
Mm.
specific areas of the brain, often the prefrontal cortex, to influence neural activity.
Mhm.
Okay. Is that
Correct.
is that how it was described to you? Again, do you need to qualify for that? Do they need to assess you? How do you do this?
Well, I was in a particular clinic in Switzerland where it's a specialist neuro rehabilitation clinic. Um, and that was a part of their recovery suggestions to me. Um, and yeah, it was a part of my process of recovery. That was one of the things. And I have to say, the result of that was also tangible. It was a huge reduction in spasticity in my shoulder. I had frozen shoulder for a good 6 or 7 months
Uh-huh.
where I could not move at all. It was so painful. It was agonizing. And TMS definitely, definitely, definitely relieved the spasticity. It has not gone fully, but that is the reason that I will go back and try again to see if I keep going with TMS, can I reduce more spasticity and can I get to a level where I can train my hand more?
Did you notice it gradually getting better, or did one day again you woke up and thought, "Oh my God, that's gone"?
Well, we did 10 sessions, and I did a lot of electrostimulation and training immediately after having had the TMS. Um, and I would say it was a gradual feeling of reduction in spasticity.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And it was primarily the reduction in spasticity. And as you may know, I don't know if you ever suffered spasticity, but the spasticity is a big blocker for being able to gain recovery because the spasticity freezes you up. So you can't train, you can't build muscles, you can't teach yourself, because, okay, that part of my brain is dead, but neuroplasticity continues. So you can teach yourself to use those parts of your body by using another part of your brain
Yes.
if you work hard.
Yes. If
And I
only
believe
the
that.
spasticity released and gave you access to those muscles.
Correct.
Yeah. Hence Botox and hence other things to try and relieve spasticity in people's arms, legs, shoulders, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Okay. So,
I did do Botox as well.
okay, we'll talk about that as well then. So your TMS 10,
Mm.
10 sessions over what period of time?
During a 2 to 3 week period,
Okay. How long do they sessions go for?
10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. You go into the room for 10 minutes, and then off you go to do the rest of your rehab.
Does it make you feel strange, different at the time? Do you notice anything? Do you just,
No, no, you sit there. I mean, initially you're a little bit apprehensive to this device going to your head, but once you've felt the feeling, you go in and sit down and let it happen, In hindsight, I would want to do that, having been to visit this doctor in Dubai who would now like to do 30 sessions. I would like to, ideally, if it wasn't so expensive, give me 30, let me keep going.
okay.
I'm very much a I'll try anything guy.
I love it. I love it, Jason. So, hyperbaric first, TMS
Mm.
second, Etanercept third,
Yeah,
and then
yeah. What was the other one I mentioned?
you just,
Um,
yeah, me too. You just mentioned it just then. Um,
yeah,
Botox.
Botox. Yeah, Botox. You know, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Botox. So I did Botox. Uh, Probably I did the Botox before the TMS actually. So I came out of hospital. I did hyperbaric oxygen, and then I did Botox, which was injected with ultrasound so that they could sense the movement of the muscle to make sure that we injected it into the right muscles that controlled, for example, the wrist and the hand and the shoulder, because the frozen shoulder was there as well because of that. Um, I think I felt a little change from there, but I went twice actually. I went back for a little top up as well.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm not so sure about but I do believe that Botox works. I'm not that keen on putting botulism into my body. Call me weird, call me whatever. I'm not that keen on that. Eh, you know,
Not
it's not my
weird.
thing.
Not weird. Fair enough. Um, some
Yeah.
people have had really negative reactions to Botox, which makes sense because it's a poison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just in those words there, right? Botox is a poison.
Yeah.
So why would I inject poison into my body? Yes, I know it's going to relax the spasticity, but it's also disabling the muscle. So therefore, my training ability, I don't think is going to be that good. Like right now, my grip can hold onto a rope and I can pull weights up and down with my right hand. If I have the Botox, I can't hold on to things.
Uh-huh.
And I like to be able to hold on and be able to do some exercises, even though it doesn't give me great mobility. I can get the arm up there and move it around, and the hand closes, you can see. But the spasticity now, it's difficult for me to push it out.
So it just
Yeah,
releases the hand. It doesn't give you more ability to activate the different parts that you need to activate to do the things that you need to do.
correct, correct.
Okay. So
Yeah,
botulism, the reason they do it is because it's a poison, but dose matters. Dose is really
yeah,
important, right? Food
yeah,
is certain foods are okay, but if you overdo certain foods, well, it's a poison. It's just the dosage is over a longer
yeah,
period of time, and you you cause all these negative things by eating the wrong food, and
yeah,
it's having the same outcome. So that with botulism, I imagine because of the way it's absorbed into the body, the way that it's dealt with in the different locations, etc., that's why they can pinpoint accuracy, put it somewhere, and do quote unquote good with it instead of cause harm
yeah,
because dosage
yeah,
matters. But
yeah,
there have been negative outcomes with people receiving cosmetic Botox, and who knows
yeah.
under what conditions they received that and why they had
Mm,
negative effects. Everybody's different. Um,
yeah. Agreed, agreed.
so I understand that. So as far as your personality goes, you're a really
Mhm.
interesting kind of guy because let's talk about the negative stuff a little bit. Like, didn't you have bad days? Weren't you
Yeah,
struggling? having, depressive thoughts or anything like that? Tell me about that side of it, not just the woo woo wah wah, everything's fantastic, I'm going to go for it stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
You're human, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, of course, you have very bad days where you wake up crying in the morning and everything's, I can get myself crying now if you want, but it's an emotional trip, right? The whole thing is an emotional trip. Um, and I've gone for therapy. I have a friend who's a holistic life coach, and she's done a lot of work with me, um, working to understand things about myself to be able to be stronger in on the path to recovery. How you use the vocabulary of what, when you talk about yourself in this situation, the vocabulary you use about your situation, so that you're not being derogatory to yourself. you know um I'm going to say it now. I would say, geez, I'm handicapped or I'm disabled or whatever. Well, no, you're not actually. You're just on a path to recovery. There's nothing, you're absolutely fine. You are normal. I used to say, when I'm normal again, and she said to me, you can't say that because you are normal. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just on a path to recovery. You've just got to recover.
Yeah.
And we will work on that conversation, and we'll go deep inside and dig out things and remove barriers and emotional things that you work on to it's called the journey, um, to help you be stronger.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely I've had black moments. I mean, come on, you can't, the the not being able to do the things you would normally do. I mentioned riding motorcycles, water skiing, all these wonderful things that you can't do. That has an emotional burden, no question.
your is it your predisposition to be problem solving, looking for solutions rather than focusing on the negative? But uh, as happens with a lot of people, when you're in a stroke situation, the negatives tend to rear their ugly heads and let you know that things are a little bit shit at the moment, and you've got to
Yeah.
dig deep, and you've got to find new ways to overcome what's going on in your life,
Mm.
right?
100%. Yeah. I am definitely a, you know, solution guy. I will look for I believe that there's a solution to everything. We just have to find the way. Um, I believe that where there's a will, there's a way. And if you work hard, you will get to the top of the hill. And that is the only result that I'm looking for. Um, you know, but the the easy option, I think, in many cases, is to just sit back and accept, and oh, this is my situation. I'm going to sit on the sofa. I'm going to eat the wrong food. I can't exercise. I can't walk, so I'm going to sit in a wheelchair, and that's me done. Well, I'm not going to accept that. I ain't having that at all.
Yeah.
No way.
And it seems like the easy route, but it's not, because it creates a harder life.
Sure, sure.
It just makes things more complicated,
Nothing's
more
easy.
difficult, and
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
it's a different kind of hard. It's a hard down the road, rather than a hard
sure.
now effort. Consistency,
Yeah,
eating well, changing your habits,
yeah.
changing the way you speak to yourself, your behavior, uh, and
All
all
of
that
that.
sort of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. What
fully agreed.
Maybe this is um, inaccurate, but I'm going to ask it like this anyway, and then we can address it.
Sure.
Why is your wife not the person that you can sit down and talk to about those things that your life coach can talk to you about? As in, what does a third person bring into the conversation that you're not getting um, in your regular daily life?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely have deep conversations with my wife and my family and my kids and everything. That's not a problem. But I think when you bring in a person who is professionally educated and has tools to work on understanding and helping you to come through these things, barriers, emotional barriers that you maybe even don't forget the stroke. In general, I think talking to a third party who has tools and methodologies to help you to discover how to be a bit more, in line with yourself, it's fabulous,
Uh-huh.
amazing.
I love that part that you said
My therapist is called Emma, and she's genius, genius.
professional tools. That's why, because your wife
Yes,
is your wife and her profession is not to find ways and tools to get you over the line. It's to provide emotional support, household support, all the things, to cook a meal, to
yeah,
take you to an appointment, to do all these sorts
yeah,
of things. And she offers great value, but it's
that's
not the
right.
way she makes her living.
That's right. Absolutely. And professional person who is trained. And I'll be honest with you, I go to these sessions. A session is 2 hours long. If let's say I've done 11 sessions, out of the 11 sessions, I would say 9 or 10 of them, I have probably bawled with tears for an hour and 45 minutes. Like uncontrollable
Yeah.
emotional release. That's not going to happen when you talk to your wife. This is people who have an ability and a tools and an emotional, a spiritual connection. I don't know what you want to call it, but they know how to get you to be honest with yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest problems so many people have. They lie to themselves. They don't face the truth.
Yeah. So these releases that you're having, are these long held, pent up things from your past that you didn't know were there? Or are these things that you professionally avoided confronting while it was okay and you didn't need to confront it?
And no, no, a lot of it is definitely, past things that have happened in your life that you have what I call boxed and shelved, emotions that you have boxed and parked, and you just carry on. And until you go back and dig them out, deal with them, face them, and as Emma says, embrace them with love, you can never get rid of them. And they'll remain um, a blockage in your system or in your journey.
How were they blocking your life before stroke that you weren't aware of? And how have they released you now that you're aware of them and
Yeah,
dealt with them?
I can't tell you that because I didn't, I can't tell you that because I wasn't aware at that time
Wow.
that that's where it was. But could that be an added reason for what's happened? Who knows? I just don't know. I can't explain it, but I can tell you it's been good to do it.
Yeah, emotional trauma is definitely considered a negative health risk to
So,
people's outcomes, stroke, heart attack, cancers, like it's all connected
yeah,
because you
yeah,
change the chemistry of your body when you're in constant emotional stress, turmoil, pain, suffering. And if you don't
yes,
confront it and you don't release it and let it go, well, then it constantly impacts the body negatively. So that's really important.
100%, 100%.
And it sounds like, because this is the thing you've bragged about more than any of the medical interventions. It sounds like the thing that was one of the keys to, well, your recovery. And I'm not talking about being able to move your hand better, but that other
Mm,
part of recovery that's in here
mm.
and in your heart.
You know, um, as I say to many people, the biggest challenge with the result of my stroke is the mental fight you have with yourself,
Mm,
within yourself. You have the physical issues, but it's that willpower to carry on that is the challenge. And to have that mental strength is one of the challenges. And
yeah.
therefore, I think you can take medicine and you can do medical things, and they're obviously a part of the process, and you hope that they're going to give you something. But that emotional control to manage the mental state of mind is, it's not unquestionably one of the biggest things you have to deal with.
Is that what you refer to, what people would refer to as building resilience?
Yeah, I guess partially, yes, yes. But building the resilience to continue with a will and a drive and a self-motivation that you will win this.
Yeah. I uh, I went and did a whole bunch of coaching at the beginning of my journey as well.
Okay.
2012,
Right.
man, for
Hmm.
about 2 years solid, and then counseling from a psychologist at the same time. So the
Mm.
psychologist was more about helping me with the thinking, how I did my
Yeah.
thinking, and
Yeah.
make me aware of the things that I was doing, saying, acting that were perhaps getting in my way. And then
Yeah.
the coaching was more about how to take action on the new ways I wanted to think, the action on the new
Yeah.
ways I wanted to behave, talk to myself, etc. They combined,
Mm.
right? And
Yeah. Fully.
they were the biggest part of the transformation that was Bill, because the people that watch this podcast who've never met the Bill before the stroke at 37, man, that was a completely different person. I mean, we inhabit
Yeah.
the same body, but they were
Mm.
completely two different people.
Yeah.
Um, and
And what in what way do you feel that you've changed?
well, the old me would never do a podcast, would never write a book, uh,
Right.
would never have met 350 people from all around the planet that had gone
Mm.
through something similar to find a
Mm.
way to make sense of it, transform it, battle it out, overcome it. I wasn't a problem
Mm.
solver. I was a problem finder, and that was about
Yeah.
it. I used to find a shitload
Yeah.
of problems and then get stuck there and go,
Yeah.
oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm overwhelmed. I've got all these problems.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what I didn't realize was I was focusing on all the problems rather than all the solutions. And
Mm.
that created more problems in my head, in my heart,
Sure. Sure.
in my entire life. And I felt like the walls were sort of coming in around me. And I find myself there
Mm.
sometimes as well, still these days,
Okay.
because
Hmm.
the stroke makes me wake up in the morning like I did this morning with a headache that I've had for about,
Yeah.
I don't know, the last 3 or 4 weeks on and off. Every second or third day, it kind of dissipates and then it comes back again.
Mm.
Um,
Have you tried Etanercept yourself?
I haven't tried it yet. I haven't tried. I haven't gone down that path. Um,
Mm. I
and
think
I've
that would
been,
be interesting for you.
yeah, yeah, I've been on the path of kind of trying to convince myself whether I should go down that route. And the challenge I have with it is that there is no, and maybe this is again that thing, where I'm getting in my own way. The challenge I have with it is that there's no way of knowing whether you're the right candidate or not. Where some of the people I have interviewed about HBOT will go through the process of determining whether you're a candidate for HBOT and whether you'll get results, which is the most important thing, because what that does is that minimizes the risk of people who haven't got 20 grand or 30 grand to
Mm.
put it down and then
Mm.
get no result for it.
Mm.
And I know
Sure.
a lot of stroke survivors might not be in a situation where they're comfortable financially. And especially when you've had a stroke and you can't work and you're working a job,
Mm.
finances become
Ah, man.
an issue instantly, right?
You
So,
sure? Sure. And I heard you on one of your other podcasts with people talking about insurance. Insurances are good. I was luckily insured, so the hospital was covered by the insurance, and the insurance has been fabulous on that level. But when it comes to being an outpatient, having left hospital as an outpatient, you need physiotherapy for as long as it may need.
yeah,
And these insurances have a limit to how much they will pay for physiotherapy or chiropractor or occupational therapy, and that is for many people a problem. And of course, I feel the expense. It's an expensive game. This whole thing is very expensive.
yeah, yeah. I'm at the chiropractor. I'm at the my therapist. I'm at the acupuncturist. I'm at all
Yeah.
these people so regularly. You've tried acupuncture
You
too?
mentioned acupuncture.
Yeah.
So I had to bring that one in too. So I had a very, very good acupuncturist who was from Switzerland called Andrew. And he came to my house and we did acupuncture. And I'm talking needles across the top of the head with electricity and all these things. Now, was that a part of my reasons for recovery at the time? I don't know. His healing, his pain removal was pretty intense and very good. It wasn't permanent, unfortunate,
Yeah.
but acupuncture was also a good one. And I've watched. I don't know if you ever watched the video on YouTube called 999 Needles or something.
No.
Do you ever watch that? It's about an American guy who unfortunately passed, but he was very affected by his stroke, and he went to China for acupuncture, and they managed to do some pretty intense recovery on him. And he, number of years later, he had another stroke and didn't survive. But that was an interesting one.
Maybe you'll send me the link and we'll include it in the show notes, and then we'll get people to go have a look at it, and just for a point
Yeah,
of
maybe. I'm not sure if I should reference to that. Maybe, yeah, I can do. Yeah, but yeah, interesting. Acupuncture is one. Um, what else have I tried? I feel like I've tried everything
and it sounds like you're not going to
except
stop
stem
trying.
cells.
Stem
No,
cells.
I'm not going to stop.
Yeah,
Have you heard about stem cells? What do you think to that?
I have, but nothing positive in that. Again, stem cells seem to be not negative, so they don't tend to
No.
cause negative side effects. The challenge with them is how do you get them into the location that you want them to go, and how do you ensure that they target the part of the brain that they need to target,
Mm,
and
mm,
where do the stem cells come from and which ones are the best? I know there's a bit of research and a little bit of work being done, but again, in the
mm,
Western countries, there seems to be a ethical issue around stem cells,
mm,
and I know in Panama there seems to be
mm,
more work done on stem cell research than anywhere else, and I think the reason is
mm,
because the government is a little more relaxed about the so-called ethical issues around stem cells and where they
mm,
come from,
mm,
and
mm.
it's one of those places in the world where there's a little less what's the word, um, government interference into.
Yeah, red tape.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
I've had somebody who I know who's had stem cells in their hip before and told me that they got good results in pain relief, etc. But again,
Yeah.
it's a bit of an arthritic hip, so it doesn't remove the damage that the arthritis has caused. It somehow seems to regenerate supportive tissues or structures that make the pain ease. But again, it also wears off. It doesn't last forever. Similar to Botox, similar to acupuncture, they tend to
Mm.
be temporary resolutions.
Fixes. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Yeah, the story that you talked about one day in your podcast with this drug that they found, DD970, I think it's called.
Yeah,
Um,
the trial that was done recently that they
yeah,
showed
Dr. Tom something.
they
Is that
showed
it? Yeah, you
in the
UCLA.
UCLA showed positive results in mice that they can
That's it.
reduce inflammation in the brain with a pill, with
Yeah,
a tablet.
yeah. And then there's Neuralink, all of these things. Basically, for me, those things all provide a positive outlook that, and with AI and science now and technology, I'm quite confident that we will find something soon, not too much in the distant future, that is going to be positively able to help with mobility over and above physical training. I definitely believe in physical training.
Yeah. I, I I do believe there was some groundbreaking work done in people with quadriplegia and paraplegia, where they were able to bypass the damaged part of the spine from the top of the
Mm,
spine to the path underneath the damaged area of the spine to take the
mm,
signals and send them further down the spine, uh, bypassing the area that was damaged. Again, not
mm.
massive inroads, but results, some kind of theoretical results, anyhow, being able to sort of show that. And if you think about people who
Yeah.
have lost an arm, they have a robotic arm that
Mm,
they can open and close and
mm.
twist and grab things with. It kind of is the similar type of thing
Yeah.
where somehow they they get those signals to transfer from the
Mm.
part that's remaining to another device and um, create a create a movement, create an outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be a way. I have this dream that we could create a form of polyfiller or a silicon filler that we could go in, and that silicon filler can fill the gap. Because if I showed you the scan of my brain, there are definite black areas, right?
Yeah.
Um, and you have this vision that if you could just go in with a polyfiller and fill it, then that material that has gone in could carry the neurons, and it would, like a plant, grow new roots through that piece. At the moment, the black gap is unable to grow. It needs to be reconnected. Put some polyfiller in there, and let's reconnect the wires that are in between. Surely that's possible in today's science. You know what I'm saying? It's like I have this dream that we could create that. I like the idea.
Love him or hate him, we need another Elon Musk type character to get that product under development. I know with Neuralink, there's been a bit of a challenge. A cousin of mine is a neurologist, and he
Mm,
spoke to me about the challenges with stuff like Neuralink because the
mm,
implants that they put into the brain to sort of generate that additional function with the
yeah.
implanted chip, they say that those prongs that they put into the cavity of the brain or wherever they go to sort of embed, they say that there is a challenge with them in that they get ejected from the area that they were
Mm,
installed over a period of time, and
right.
reinstalling it and re-intervening with the brain, creates additional
Mm,
challenges and risks. So
of course.
not as clear cut as what it may have been like, thought that it
No.
would be like early on. Long term, people who are being studied with it seem to have had this, what's the word, like a disconnection with the
Right.
device, and
Right.
they're not certain yet how to address it.
Hence my thinking that if you could have this silicon filler
Mm,
that was able to carry the, I don't know, like a special potting putty that allows growth for
yeah,
the neurons and wires to grow through, surely,
yeah.
must be possible.
Conductive of electrical
That
type
was the word I
signals.
was looking for.
Yeah, yeah.
My lack of English words. There you go. Even
That's
though I'm English.
now you're doing all
Yeah.
right. You're doing all right. Well, that's really interesting. So, um, we've had a very interesting conversation. There's people
Mm.
listening here. The title of this podcast is going to be something like "He's tried everything," or "He's tried Halo,
Yes.
he's tried this, he's tried that." People are going
Yeah.
to jump on and they're going to have a listen. Like,
Yeah.
what would you sort of say to people who are just going through what you and I have been through? Because some people are finding this podcast in their hospital beds just after they've had a stroke. So,
Mm.
what do we tell
I
people
wish
about
I had.
that journey?
Well, firstly, I wish I'd done that and found it when I was in hospital. I what would I say? You know, Hopefully you have somebody who cares for you and loves you, which I had, and does the research. Um, I think I would have liked that hospitals and doctors who were treating me at the time were more open to telling you about all these different opportunities or possibilities that there are. Instead of just saying you've got to go down the path of physiotherapy and occupational therapy and repetitive movement and la da 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 da, that's what you've got to do. I would have liked somebody to tell me of all of these different things we can do. Now, of course, then I went to this place in Switzerland and they had all those things, very expensive, so prohibitive to many people because of the price. If you can afford it, great. The sooner you go to those places, the better it is. I think with a stroke, the quicker. If I knew that, those early 6 to 7 to 10 months were how important they were, I may have made more of an effort. Because at the time you're very neural fatigue. You have fatigue. You're tired. I'm not as tired now as I was, so I can fight harder. But the reality is, had I known that and pushed harder in those first 6 months, could I have made a difference? Now, I did push quite hard. We did do a lot of work, and I think there is also a natural um, recovery process that goes on. I believe that even, I went to one doctor who said to me, once you've passed your 6 months to 1 year, you've pretty much done the recovery you're going to do. That was probably the worst statement any doctor could ever tell me, because that really knocks you back.
I agree.
Ooh, shit, you know. Luckily, my wife and other people kept me going. You can't say that because there's always hope and there's always, the more effort you make, the more chances you are going to recover. You will recover. You just have to work hard and believe.
And you might recover with an arm that doesn't work. You might recover with a leg that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that after that 6 month period that they keep talking about, I don't know why they bloody say that, but after that six
No.
month period is they call it the plateau. People hit the plateau.
Yeah.
But the reality is that's when things become nuanced. You start to focus on little bits of the recovery that you didn't get in the first 6 months. Um, and
Mm.
that might also include the emotional recovery because that's a
Hmm.
part of the recovery that people gloss over and overlook and don't talk about.
100%. 100%. You talk about plateau. I think I've hit multiple plateaus. Some days I'll wake up and I will feel that my leg is less effective than it was 2 days before.
Mm,
Now, the way I deal with that is, as you said, every time there is a difference, it's a difference. It may be a backwards movement, but that backwards movement may well be the body just going, hold on a second, we'll just recheck this passage before we go there. And then 2 weeks later, like this morning when I went for my walk was so much better than it was 2 days ago. But then I'm going to say 2, 3 weeks ago, my walk was very good and it kind of went down. And
uh-huh.
I feel that every time I hit those plateaus and I have these sort of down moments, the next step up is a bigger one. So all of these plateaus are bounding levels where you improve. You might go back, you improve. But every time you improve, it's that little bit better than it was.
Yeah.
That's my result and feeling of it. But the plateau is definitely an issue. And it's also one of the spaces where you've got to be really mentally strong because it smacks you back.
Yeah. You kind of got to anticipate it a little bit. It might come. If it does, don't panic. Just
Yeah.
let it go, let it do its thing, and
Yeah.
then reassess a couple of weeks after
Yeah.
this supposed plateau or whatever has passed.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things that I would say to somebody now. And I've spoken to a lot of people who I've found online, stroke survivors. There's a couple of people here, stroke survivors. You know, myself and this guy Galinda. He's a fighter. I mean, he's a fighter, unbelievable fighter. And the happiness of being alive is key. You have to be focused on I'm still here. Um, it it's easy for me to say because I have my speech, and if you look at me now, I like you. We can't tell that we've had strokes.
Yeah.
Severe brain hemorrhage. Um, and that's difficult to say to somebody who maybe has aphasia and many other issues where they can't communicate or whatever. That's a bigger challenge, right? But you've got to stay positive. You've got to believe that you can.
Yeah. I agree with that. And
I think Etanercept for people with aphasia is one of the bigger uh, things that works is aphasia speech, as from what I've seen.
yeah, I I interviewed Lorenzo a few weeks ago, uh, and we spoke about his AVM brain hemorrhage, like me. Um, and as a result, his vision is impacted. And he used to be a tattoo artist, and he's lost that ability. And
Mm,
for a stir, for a laugh, I sort of said, "Why? Why don't you see if somebody would be willing for you to do a tattoo from a blind person? It,
mhm.
it would have to be
Uh-huh.
the first tattoo from a blind person. And in
Yeah,
this day and age, with the amount of body art that people have,
yeah,
surely that could become a
interesting.
thing. Put a
Yeah.
stencil,
And what did he say?
yeah, it was like his eyes lit up. Like you could see that he kind of had a moment of like, I don't know if it's a thing, but if somebody wants to be tattooed by me, yeah, I'll tattoo them.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree. Yeah.
you can create a stencil and work within the stencil so you don't go all over the arm or all over the leg or wherever. And
I mean,
look
yeah,
at that and look at
you,
that piece of art behind that piece of art. I've had a lot of artists who said they can't be they can't paint anymore because they can't see properly, or their hand
Mm,
trembles, or they can't hold the brush properly. Like, if
mm,
we look at that piece of art behind you, who cares? You're still an
mm,
artist. You still have
mm.
that capability of understanding how things go on a canvas, color, um, you know, texture, all these things. I don't even know what the words are. So
Yeah,
I kind of want to encourage people to take their identity and bring it and combine it with their stroke identity. So they're not just one or the other. They are
yeah,
both of them. And they are weird and strange and different because they're tattooing blind, or they're painting blind, or whatever they're doing. Like, to me, I don't want to, I don't want people to say, I can't be this anymore because this happened to me. It's not, I don't think
agreed.
it should be one or the other. I think it should be
No,
every part of you combined into this thing that you're going to move forward as. And you need to develop that. I don't let anyone tell you that you have to stop now. Like sports people
no,
who are in the
yeah,
Paralympics who win gold medals after they've had a massive car crash, or,
yeah,
do you know?
yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I say to myself, this is one of those challenges that's been thrown at you to teach you a bunch of things to
Yeah.
make you a better person. My has my personality changed? I don't think so, but maybe other people tell you I have. But I definitely am more conscious of things and a way of being than I potentially would be before.
Yeah.
The diet and the health and all of these things you've got to carry on to do.
Yeah. And not better
Yeah.
as in you were bad or terrible or worse before, but more evolved, more wise, more knowledgeable, like that.
Yes. Oh, 100%. I would like to create a charity to help other people in the similar situation to me. I want to, I would love for people who can't afford the tools to recover, it would be great to have a foundation that
No.
could, even if it's only 20 people in my vicinity or that I can find out about, that I can help them on the path to recovery. I would love to do that. And I have a few tricks that I would like to, if I could find somebody to invest a few $1 million into something, I can make a way to do this. So it's very possible to do that.
Yeah. And some philanthropy, that would be amazing as well. That's
Yeah.
what my hope for the podcast is. Say that I get some sponsors, and or I get some decent revenue uh from YouTube or wherever. That would be my
Mm.
hope. That hasn't happened yet, but you never know.
I should do. I mean, it's a great podcast, and I fell across it. Um, there's a lady in America who's a stroke therapist, occupational therapist. I forget right now the name of the lady. And I was on there, and when you look at it on YouTube, and you search for these things, you came up as one thing, and then I watched a couple of your podcasts, and when you talked about Etanercept, and I thought I'd just drop you that note and
Yeah.
say, I've tried everything pretty much, or I've tried most of the things. Might be it's a worthy conversation. And I would love to partake in conversations with other people too, where we build a conversation with people to encourage people to be stronger emotionally. Because I think the emotional and mental fight is going to be the biggest one for everybody.
I tend to agree with you. Yeah, and that's
And
really,
I think if in conversation you can help somebody, giving them backup and a conversation with somebody is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
oh man, it's the best. I mean, it's literally been the key behind my own recovery. Without this podcast, I'm not sure where I would be in the mental health space, in the emotional space,
Mm,
because even though I can't represent the broad spectrum of stroke, because I
mm.
look the way I look and my experience is my own. Um,
Yeah, of
the people that I've had, they've ranged every version of stroke, from aphasia
course.
and actually not being able to talk at all while we're on the podcast, by
Yeah,
the way,
yeah.
to people who can't walk, to people who have had a stroke and don't look, feel, talk about it in any way that it impacted them negatively. Like, there's a 1 in 350 of them, but there is
Mm.
at least one person who had the medication immediately and everything went
Mm-hmm.
away and went better, and they don't have any deficits to deal with and overcome, which is like
Yeah, there's
amazing.
a few of those.
Yeah, and
A
that's
friend of mine's mother did it the other day. A friend of mine's mother had that and was, straight away and has no effects. And I'm so happy for them. I mean, that's amazing. I wish, you know, you kind of wish, don't you? There is always that fight in your head when you look, in my case, you look back and go, why didn't I see that email? Why didn't I do this? And you can beat yourself up for days on end,
changes
but it
nothing.
ain't going to get you nothing. Not
Yeah.
going to give me nothing. If you can't do anything about it, park it.
Yeah. What I love is that I looked at the stats on the YouTube channel, and the people listening to the podcast is about 60% men, 40% women. Now,
Mm,
I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that
mm,
men would be listening. Now, they're not the
mm,
people who reach out the most. It's a lot of women who reach out and do more of the
mhm,
conversation side, but the men are
mhm,
paying attention and listening into the background. So, congratulations to everybody who pays attention and listens. Congratulations to those blokes who are paying attention
mm,
and listening to us. Thank you for being on the
mm.
podcast and reaching out. I
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. And yeah,
My
um,
pleasure.
and I'm really excited by the amount of people who reach out and say, I'd love to be on the podcast. And I don't have to reach out to them and find them now. That is
Yeah,
exactly why I created this community, to create a platform for people
yeah,
to come on board. And what it's helped me to do is be a connector. Every so often, I find out
yeah.
something from somebody that I remember that I can pass on to somebody else. And that's a life changer
Very
because it
cool.
decreases
That's it.
the time
Yeah,
that it takes to gain new information.
yeah.
And it's brilliant. I love it. Thank you so much for being on
Amazing.
the podcast.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on board. It's an interesting topic, isn't it? And one that affects a lot of people. So we need to spread the word. Like I said, if only the medical practitioners spread the word about alternative things more openly, it could be different.
It could be. Uh, let's hope. Let's hope that things change and continue to improve for stroke survivors, mate. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yes. My pleasure. All the best. Thank you very much.
That brings us to the end of this remarkable conversation with Jason, a man who faced a life-altering brain hemorrhage, lost his mobility and speech, and then set out to reclaim what he could by trying nearly everything he could find. From hyperbaric oxygen to Etanercept in Denmark, from frozen shoulder to holistic coaching sessions that moved him to tears. Jason reminds us that the recovery of brain hemorrhage isn't just about medical treatment. It's about the courage to keep showing up, even when progress is slow and the emotional toll is high. If this episode resonated with you, please let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, or leave a review wherever you're listening. And remember, even just pressing play or listening through the ads helps this podcast stay alive. If you'd like to go deeper in supporting this community and help me keep sharing stories like Jason's, please visit patreon.com/recoveryafterstroke. Your contribution helps ensure that the next stroke survivor, maybe one just days into their recovery, finds hope, connection, and possibility right when they need it most. Thanks again for being here wherever you are on your recovery journey. Remember, your stroke isn't over and your next breakthrough might be closer than you think. I'll catch you in the next episode.
Importantly, we present many podcasts designed to give you an insight and understanding into the experiences of other individuals. Opinions and treatment protocols discussed during any podcast are the individual's own experience, and we do not necessarily share the same opinion, nor do we recommend any treatment protocol discussed. All content on this website and any linked blog, podcast, or video material controlled this website or content is created and produced for informational purposes only and is largely based on the personal experience of Bill Gasiamis. The content is intended to complement your medical treatment and support healing. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice and should not be relied on as health advice. The information is general and may not be suitable for your personal injuries, circumstances, or health objectives. Do not use our content as a standalone resource to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease for therapeutic purposes or as a substitute for the advice of a health professional. Never delay seeking advice or disregard the advice of a medical professional. professional, your doctor, or your rehabilitation program based on our content. If you have any questions or concerns about your health or medical condition, please seek guidance from a doctor or other medical professional. If you are experiencing a health emergency or think you might be, call 000 if in Australia, or your local emergency number immediately for emergency assistance, or go to the nearest hospital emergency department. Medical information changes constantly. While we aim to provide current, quality information in our content, we do not provide any guarantees and assume no legal liability or responsibility for the accuracy, currency, or completeness of the content. If you choose to rely on any information within our content, you do so solely at your own risk. We are careful with links we provide. However, third-party links from our website are followed at your own risk, and we are not responsible for any information you find there.